The Girl Who Knew Tomorrow. The rain started just as the last bus left the small town of Riverhill. The streets became quiet, and the yellow lights of the shops slowly turned off one by one. Only one place was still open. A small bookstore at the corner of Maple Street. The sign above the door read, "Old Pages." Inside the shop, a man named Daniel arranged books on a wooden shelf. He had owned the bookstore for almost 15 years. It was not a famous shop, and very few people came there, but Daniel loved it. Books had always been his world. Outside, thunder rumbled softly. Daniel looked at the clock on the wall. It was almost 10 p.m. He was about to close the shop when he heard the door open. The bell above the door rang once. Daniel turned. A girl stood at the entrance. She looked about 16 years old. Her dark hair was wet from the rain, and she held a small notebook tightly against her chest. Daniel smiled politely. "Sorry," he said. "We're about to close." The girl stepped inside anyway. "I only need a minute," she said. Her voice was calm but strange, as if she already knew what he would say next. Daniel hesitated, then nodded. "All right. What are you looking for?" The girl walked slowly between the shelves. Her eyes moved across the books, but she did not seem to be searching for a title. It felt more like she was remembering something. Finally she stopped near the back wall. "There should be a blue book here," she said. Daniel looked confused. "We have many blue books." "This one has no title," the girl said. Daniel frowned. He walked to the shelf and began checking. To his surprise, there really was a blue book hidden behind two large dictionaries. It had no title. Daniel picked it up slowly. "I've owned this shop for years," he said. "I've never seen this book before." The girl stepped closer. "You weren't supposed to find it yet," she said quietly. Daniel laughed nervously. "Well, I guess I just did." He handed her the book. But the girl did not take it. "You should read the last page first." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "That's not how books usually work." "This one does," she replied. Something about her voice made him curious. Daniel opened the book and flipped to the last page. The page was blank except for one sentence written in black ink. "Tomorrow at 3:15 p.m., the bookstore will burn." Daniel stared at the words. Then he laughed. "Is this some kind of joke?" The girl did not laugh. "No." Daniel closed the book. "Look," he said gently, "if you are trying to scare me, it's not working." But the girl only looked at the clock. "You should close the shop early tomorrow," she said. Daniel shook his head. "This place has survived storms, floods, and bad business. I think it will survive one strange book." The girl sighed softly. "You always say that." Daniel blinked. "What?" But the girl had already turned toward the door. Before leaving, she said one last thing. "Tomorrow, someone will come at 3:10 p.m. Don't let him enter." Then she disappeared into the rain. Daniel stood there for a long moment. Finally he placed the blue book on the counter and closed the shop. That night, he could not sleep. The sentence in the book kept returning to his mind. Tomorrow at 3:15 p.m., the bookstore will burn. It sounded ridiculous. Still, the girl had known exactly where the book was hidden. That part bothered him. The next morning, the rain had stopped. Sunlight filled the streets of River Hill. Daniel opened the bookstore at the usual time. Customers came and went during the morning. Everything seemed normal. Around noon, Daniel began to forget about the strange girl. But at 2:50 p.m., he suddenly remembered the time written in the book. He looked at the clock. Only 25 minutes left. Daniel felt foolish. Still, he checked the shop carefully. No smoke. No fire. Nothing unusual. At 3:05 p.m., he laughed at himself. "I'm worrying about nothing," he muttered. Then the doorbell rang. Daniel looked up. A man stood at the entrance. He wore a dark coat and carried a large bag. Daniel's smile faded. The girl's words returned to his mind. "Someone will come at 3:10 p.m. Don't let him enter." The man stepped inside. "Good afternoon," he said politely. Daniel forced a smile. "Good afternoon." The man looked around the bookstore slowly. "I'm searching for a rare book," he said. Daniel felt uneasy. "What book?" The man's eyes moved toward the counter. "A blue one." Daniel's heart skipped. "Sorry," he said quickly. "We're closing." The man looked surprised. "But your sign says you close at 6. Today is different." The man studied Daniel's face carefully. Then he shrugged. "All right." He turned and walked toward the door. Daniel relaxed slightly. The man paused at the entrance. "You know," he said casually, "it would be terrible if something happened to such a lovely bookstore." Daniel felt cold. "What do you mean?" The man smiled faintly. "Nothing." Then he left. Daniel locked the door immediately. His hands were shaking. He looked at the clock. 3:12 p.m. 3 minutes left. The shop was silent. Daniel suddenly smelled something strange. Smoke. He turned toward the back room. Thin gray smoke curled under the door. Daniel ran and pushed the door open. Inside, a small fire burned near a stack of old papers. Daniel grabbed a fire extinguisher and quickly put out the flames. Within seconds, the fire was gone. Daniel stood there breathing heavily. The clock in the main room ticked loudly. 3:15 p.m. exactly the time written in the book. Daniel slowly walked back to the counter. The blue book was still there. But something had changed. The last page now had a new sentence. "You stopped the fire." Daniel stared at the words. Then another line slowly appeared beneath it. Ink forming as if written by an invisible hand. "But the story is not finished." Daniel stepped back in shock. Suddenly the doorbell rang again. Daniel looked up quickly. The girl stood in the doorway. Her hair was dry this time. She smiled slightly. You did better than last time. Daniel's voice trembled. What are you talking about? The girl walked inside and picked up the blue book. In the first version of this story, she said calmly, you trusted the man. Daniel felt dizzy. What first version? The one where the bookstore burned completely. Daniel stared at her. You are joking. No, she said softly. She opened the notebook she had been carrying the night before. Inside were many pages filled with writing. Dates, times, events, all the tomorrows, she said. Daniel looked at the pages. Some of them described events that had already happened earlier that day. Exactly. Who are you? He whispered. The girl closed the notebook. My name is Mira. Daniel shook his head slowly. That doesn't explain anything. Mira looked around the bookstore. Every night, she said, I dream about tomorrow. Daniel frowned. That's impossible. Not dreams, she corrected. Memories. Daniel felt a chill run through him. Memories of the future? Mira nodded. I remember things that have not happened yet. Daniel sat down slowly. That doesn't make sense. Mira smiled sadly. It doesn't need to. Daniel looked at the blue book again. So this book writes the future? Not exactly, Mira said. It writes possibilities. Daniel leaned back in his chair. And you change them? Sometimes. Daniel stared at her. Why help me? Mira looked at the window. Outside, the sun was beginning to set. Because in many futures, she said quietly, this bookstore becomes very important. Daniel blinked. Important how? Mira did not answer immediately. Instead, she walked to the door. Before leaving, she turned back toward him. Tomorrow, she said, something else will happen. Daniel sighed. Another fire? Mira shook her head. Something bigger. Daniel waited. Mira smiled slightly. And next time, you might not be able to stop it alone. Then she stepped outside. The evening light faded across River Hill. Inside the bookstore, Daniel looked at the blue book again. The last page was blank now. But he knew it would not stay blank for long. Because somewhere in the town, a girl was already remembering tomorrow.